So, my history with the music of Devin Townsend is an interesting one, as is most people's history with any artist that they have ever gotten into, and here I am sharing my experience so far with the man's vast musical discography. I'm going to talk about the albums of his that I've gotten into, and in the order that I picked them up. Despite how long Devin has been toiling in the music industry, I've really only fairly recently started to consider myself a fan. Now, sure, I was aware of Strapping Young Lad in the earlier 2000s. I even owned the City album at one point, which is probably his greatest achievement in his more extreme metal ventures. I even saw Strapping live almost 20 years ago, but it wasn't really my thing. Still isn't. I will say that I recently re-listened to City, though, and I do think that it's really good. He pretty much wasn't on my radar much in the early to mid-2000s, as I was pretty much immersing myself in the death and black metal underground. I do remember the Ziltoid album coming out and getting a lot of talk. A friend of mine was even really into it, and he hasn't heard a single other thing that Devin has done before or after. Now, you might be wondering, what was it that has me suddenly so interested? Well, earlier this year I saw several mentions of the Ocean Machine album here on YouTube, and it ranked very highly among a few people that I have a lot in common with, musically speaking. When they talked about the album, you could just feel their passion for it. I did not let that pass me by. I knew that something magical was there, and long story short, I was not wrong. I decided to start off by ordering Ocean Machine and Ziltoid the Omniscient from a seller on Discogs. So I knew that I was pretty much going to go through the entire discography of this dude, and I didn't really have a plan on where to dive in. So other than the albums I will be mentioning, I also have Galactic Quarantine, which is a live album recorded and performed via Zoom during the pandemic. It's pretty cool, and even has some Strapping Young Lad material, which was probably a little treat for the fans. Also recently, I picked up Acoustically Inclined, another live album from an all-acoustic set he did in Leeds. I like it. It's mellow, and I mean really mellow, almost too mellow for me, but I wanted to hear these songs played unplugged for some reason. So now I'll begin to, attempt to talk about the Ocean Machine album. I will try and do it justice, but I doubt that I'll be able to articulate it the way that it deserves. So, Ocean Machine was released in 1997. It has been released under several different monikers, but was originally released under the name Ocean Machine, with the album titled Biomech. Later, it was re-released under the Devin Townsend name, entitled Ocean Machine Biomech, and, and it's a bit confusing, but all that really matters is that the album is just incredible. It is one of the best albums I've ever heard, and I have been obsessing over it lately. My two favorite songs would be the opener, Seventh Wave, and what I would also consider to be the album's centerpiece, the 12-minute track titled The Death of Music. Seventh Wave is a fairly heavy song, but also very deep. The lyrics are amazing, and overall the song just has this huge apocalyptic feel to it, and I've always been terrified of the ocean, so that adds an interesting dynamic to the song, for me at least. It demands my attention literally every time I put it on. Now, for The Death of Music, this song is simply breathtaking, and I almost don't want to try and break it down. The song is a 12-minute masterpiece of the highest order, and nothing I've ever heard really compares to it. The lyrics are great, the song is intense, and Devin shows off his range a bit here. I believe he was in his early or mid-20s when he wrote this. Now moving on to Ziltoid, the Omniscient, from 2007, if I may, since it was the next Devin Townsend album that I would decide to tackle. Like I said earlier, I did hear this when it came out, but it had been a long time, so I was super excited to own a physical copy and had an absolute blast re-listening to it. I'd say that I like it even more now. It's a super fun and rewarding listen all the way through without a single dull moment. You may not get the kind of soul-searching, introspective, and highly emotional songs that I typically look for in Devin's music, but this is just a great metal album. The concept is just brilliant. Here you have Ziltoid, a power-hungry, war-mongering alien coming to Earth after discovering that we have something that cannot be found elsewhere in the galaxy, something that provides Ziltoid an unimaginable amount of power. And that thing is coffee. Brilliant. I fucking love it. It is also worth noting that Devin wrote, performed, engineered, and recorded this thing all by himself. He used programmed drums since he doesn't play drums, and I would have liked to have heard a real drummer like Gene Hoglan or something, but I wouldn't change a damn thing. He even crafted a Ziltoid puppet to use, also by himself. If you like progressive metal, go get this one. Next, I would pick up the 2019 album Empath. I got the 2-disc version, luckily, with disc 2 being all bonus material brilliantly titled Tests of Manhood. I actually did a review of that here on my channel if you want to check it out. Not many did. Who reviews a disc of bonus material instead of the album it came with? I fucking do, I guess. But trust me, after you listen to it, you will understand. I don't think I've ever liked any bonus material from any band as much as I did here. Not even close. There is such a variety of sounds here, which is, of course, not unusual for Devin. You've got dreamy, atmospheric pop songs, and there are some amazing symphonic metal songs that remind me of later era albums by Dimmu Borgir and Emperor, minus the black metal, of course. There are 2 on here that are honestly pretty mind-blowing. There's also a beautiful song called This Is Your Life that he wrote for his wife and kids, and it has to have one of the most powerful and memorable choruses that I've ever heard. If you have a different version of Empath and you're a Devin Townsend fan, you must go and get this 2-disc version. I'm just going to say that it's mandatory, and you just might thank me later. It's that good. Now, Empath was a huge grower for me, and I didn't seem to care much for it on the first few listens. It's a complex album, and it needs your time and attention. It's quite the journey, and I'm not yet equipped to give it a full detailed rundown, but to be fair, that's not exactly why I'm here. The album starts off with a very calm, relaxing sounding atmosphere, sparse guitar strumming with the sound of crashing ocean waves. This is the sound of a man at peace with himself. An angelic choir comes in for a minute before the steady drum beat bleeds into track 2, and then Devin's vocals come in. This is a 15-track album clocking in at around 75 minutes. There's a lot to digest here, and the man himself said that it's not an easy listen. Track 2 is heavy prog metal, the kind that I imagine a lot of his fans are super into, and there's a good amount of this type of stuff on here. It's almost like 2 albums sandwiched together. I would recommend listening to this album with minimal distraction, give it time, patience, maybe even break it up into 2 or 3 listening sessions. I'm still mentally unpacking it myself, but I'm loving it with more with each listen, I'd say. In case you didn't know, Devin got his big break by being selected to be the singer for Steve Vai's band back in 1993. He was hand-chosen by Vai himself, who received hundreds of audition tapes. Steve wanted someone relatively unknown and very unique. He wanted an anti-rock star, in his own words, and he found all of that in Devin. He had heard one of Devin's early bands called Noisescapes, and he really liked it. It was a short-lived project, but just one full length came from it, and that album is called Sex and Religion, put out by Relativity Records. I actually just got a copy recently, and while it isn't one of my favorite albums that Devin has been a part of, it is still a very cool album, and I'm happy to have it. Devin was only 20 years old at the time, and it's very cool to hear this early chapter of his career. This is not really comparable to anything else in Devin's catalog, for the most part, and Steve wrote most of it himself, but I do like it. If you like 80s rock and metal and the shred guitar stuff that was popular back then, you just might enjoy this too. It's a forward-thinking, if sort of flawed, yet ambitious album. Most of Devin's albums have been growers for me, and I don't know why that is, but there's definitely something rewarding about having to dig a little deeper, questioning your own taste, turning off your own biases and preconceived opinions. I listened to Epic Cloud once or twice after buying it a few months ago, and it just didn't resonate with me. But today, on an overcast, rainy day, my favorite weather, I put it on as I drove around for work, and I finally heard the absolute brilliance that is this album. From the intro track, Effervescent, which is like a cheery-sounding church choir that segued into the excellent second track, True North, an upbeat, positive, and full of emotion song complemented by the otherworldly Anneke van Giersbergen of The Gathering fame. who's all over this album, by the way. I'm cool with that, though, seeing as to how I might just have the biggest crush on her for years and years and years. Her voice is just absolutely godlike, and she lifts up literally everything she has ever sang on. This world does not deserve Annika. Anyways, track 3 is another favorite, and it is titled Lucky Animals, which is one of the heavier sounding tracks here. It's really mostly heavy in the riff department, and Devin sings some impressive, almost operatic type vocals, and honestly, this might be, vocally speaking, the best album I have heard from him so far. You may have seen the video for this song, and if you haven't, prepare to have your day made. This album has no weak tracks, but I'm focusing on my favorites, so far at least. Track 6 is titled Save Our Now, easily my favorite song of the last few months, and I can't get enough of it. Annika returns, Eli swoons yet again, and her voice combined with Devin's is just magical. Such an emotive song. I felt like time kind of was standing still the first time I played it, and then proceeded to listen to it at least 7 or 8 more times, in a row that day. Track 7, Kingdom, came from the Physicist album, but it is way better this time around and suits the album perfectly. Track 8, titled Divine, is a beautiful song written for Devin's wife, at least I imagine, and it would maybe seem a little bit cheesy if Devin wasn't such an honest and genuine dude. I dig the song a lot. This is a contender for my favorite Devin Townsend album, top 3 at worst. Now, this album is not out just yet, but supposedly it will be soon. It was delayed a week. So maybe even at the time that this is uploaded, it'll be available. There are 3 singles so far you can listen to, and I've actually reviewed all of them. All 3 were growers for me, but I have loved all of them within a day or 2 of letting them sink in. This album is going to be strong. I can feel it. I haven't anticipated an album like this in years. Another thing that drew me to Devin's music was that I started watching interviews with him on YouTube. Not just 1 or 2, but we are talking hours upon hours of interviews. Podcasts that he guested on as well. I was completely taken in by his genuine kindness and compassion towards people, his positivity about life and everything that it brings, which brought me to his own podcast that has sincerely changed my life for the better, where not much else lately has. So he decided to do a series of podcasts during the pandemic where he talks about each album he has done. He talks about not only the technical aspects of creating the music, but also where he was at mentally during that time, and that became why I wanted to hear more. I myself have struggled with lifelong depression, and I have never heard anyone talk about their own struggles the way he did, and I will be forever thankful. I will never, ever forget it. I've tried to recommend it to people I know, and I truly hope that they eventually check it out. And anyone listening right now that might be struggling with depression, I hope you do too. In fact, I'm begging you because I think it can really help you like it's helped me. As a fairly recent Devin Townsend fan, I have reached out to people that I know to see if they had any thoughts about his work. As you might expect, it was a mixed variety of responses. But there was one that really touched me. In case he were to ever see this, I'll not name him, of course, but he wrote me a short message that I will read here, word for word. It won't be easy for me, but I'll try. He wrote, "Let me tell you, there was one moment at the end of 2013 that I thought about ending it all, and one song off of City walked me back from that cliff. I owe Devin more than I know." I need to take a moment after reading that out loud. There is at least one beautiful soul that may not have been here still with us had it not been for some of Devin's work. I drive a lot for work, which can lead me to do a lot of thinking, and on particular bad days when I need some help, I turn on Devin's podcast. I've listened to every episode at least 3 times, and I wish there was more, but I'm grateful to have what there is so far. Anyways, the new album Lightwork is out soon via Inside Out Records. Definitely check it out. Thanks for listening to me mumble and stumble through this. It's something I felt that I needed to do, and I put some time into writing this. And Devin, should you ever see this, I'm sure the chances are slim, but thanks for everything, man.